Let me tell you something most people don't explain the right way. Pulling away doesn't mean you're giving up. It doesn't mean you're playing games. And it definitely doesn't mean you're being cold or heartless. Pulling away the right way means you are choosing yourself without announcing it. And that's powerful. See, too many people think attraction is built by doing more, talking more, giving more, explaining more. But real emotional attachment, that's built in the space, not the noise. Because here's the truth, a man doesn't start missing you when you're always there. He starts missing you when he feels the difference between your presence and your absence. And today, we're going to talk about how pulling away calmly, gracefully, and intentionally makes him think about you day and night without you chasing, begging, or forcing anything. This isn't about control. This is about clarity, confidence, and self-respect. Let's get into it. Most people misunderstand what it really means to pull away. They think it's a strategy, a trick, or some kind of emotional chess move meant to control another person's behavior. But pulling away, when done correctly, has nothing to do with manipulation. It is an act of self-respect. It is the moment you decide that your emotional energy is valuable and that it deserves to be invested wisely, not poured endlessly into someone who hasn't earned it. When you pull away from this place, the shift is not loud or aggressive. It is quiet, grounded, and deeply powerful. Self-respect begins when you stop over-explaining yourself. When someone is constantly available, constantly accommodating, constantly adjusting to keep another person comfortable, the relationship becomes unbalanced. One person gives, the other receives. Over time, this dynamic teaches the receiver that access to your time, attention, and emotional support is guaranteed. And when something is guaranteed, the human mind stops appreciating it. Pulling away interrupts this pattern, not with anger, not with silence meant to punish, but with a calm decision to stop giving more than you receive. This kind of pulling away is internal before it is external. It starts with a shift in mindset. You stop waking up and checking your phone to see if they've reached out. You stop planning your day around their availability. You stop placing their reactions above your emotional well-being. That internal shift naturally changes your behavior. You respond instead of reacting. You speak when it feels right, not when anxiety demands it. And because the change is rooted in self-respect, it doesn't come across as cold. It comes across as confident. Here's where people get confused. They think self-respect looks like detachment or emotional walls. It doesn't. Self-respect looks like balance. You still care. You still show warmth. You're still present in conversations, but you are no longer over-invested. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth through effort. And that's exactly why this approach works. When someone senses that you are emotionally full on your own, they start to see you differently. Your presence feels like a choice, not an obligation. Pulling away from a place of self-respect also means you stop chasing clarity from someone who is inconsistent. Instead of asking for reassurance repeatedly, you observe actions. Instead of pushing for answers, you allow space for behavior to speak. This does two things at once. First, it protects you from emotional exhaustion. Second, it forces the other person to become aware of their own role. When you stop compensating for their lack of effort, the imbalance becomes visible, and awareness is the first step toward change. Many people fear that pulling away will make them seem uninterested or cause the other person to leave. But the truth is, someone who leaves because you stop overgiving was never responding to you. They were responding to the benefits you provided. Self-respect filters out people who are only comfortable, not committed. And while that can feel scary at first, it is actually a form of emotional safety. You are no longer negotiating your worth in silence. Another important part of pulling away with self-respect is emotional regulation. Instead of expressing every feeling in the moment, you allow emotions to settle before responding. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means choosing when and how to share them. That level of control signals maturity and stability. And stability is attractive because it creates emotional security. People are naturally drawn to those who are steady, not reactive. When you pull away from self-respect, you are also reclaiming your time. You invest more energy into your life, your goals, your routines, and your growth. You stop putting everything on pause, waiting for someone else's attention. This shift is felt even without words. Your energy becomes lighter, less attached, more magnetic. Not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you're fulfilled. This is why pulling away in this way often leads to increased interest. The other person senses the change and begins to reflect. They feel the difference between when you were overavailable and now when your presence feels earned. That contrast creates thought. Thought creates curiosity. Curiosity creates emotional engagement. And all of it happens without confrontation, ultimatums, or pressure. Most importantly, pulling away as an act of self-respect teaches you how to stop abandoning yourself. You stop ignoring your intuition. You stop tolerating uncertainty that drains you. You stop shrinking to keep someone else comfortable. And the moment you stop doing those things, your entire dynamic changes, whether with that person or the next. So pulling away is not about making someone miss you. It's about making sure you don't lose yourself. Someone steps up when you do that, it's because they finally see your value clearly. And if they don't, it's because your self-respect revealed a truth you needed to see. Either way, pulling away from a place of dignity is never a loss. It is alignment. When constant contact disappears, something very specific happens in the human mind. Silence creates space, and space invites thought. This is not emotional theory, it's basic psychology. When someone is always present, the brain doesn't have to work to process their importance. But when access is reduced, the mind naturally begins to fill in the gaps. That's why pulling back triggers emotional processing in a way that constant communication never can. Men in particular tend to process emotions internally and retrospectively. They don't always recognize how much something matters to them while it's happening. Often, awareness comes after the pattern is disrupted. When your messages slow down, when your emotional availability becomes less predictable, his mind starts revisiting moments he previously took for granted. Conversations replay, shared laughter resurfaces. Small details suddenly feel significant, not because you demanded attention, but because absence turned memory into meaning. This is where many people make the mistake of thinking emotional connection grows through constant reassurance. In reality, constant reassurance can dull emotional awareness. When everything is available all the time, nothing stands out. But when presence is reduced, the brain begins to assign value. It starts asking questions. Why does this feel different? Why do I notice her absence? Why do I want to reach out now? These questions signal emotional engagement. Thinking is the doorway to feeling. Absence also removes distraction. When you are always there, there's no urgency to reflect. Life moves forward, comfort settles in, and emotions stay unexamined. But when that comfort is interrupted, the mind slows down, begins to compare the before and after. That comparison is powerful. It highlights what was providing emotional support, validation, or warmth. And once the mind recognizes that something mattered, attachment begins to deepen. This mental process doesn't happen instantly. It unfolds over time. First comes confusion, then curiosity, then reflection, and finally emotional realization. Pulling away allows this natural sequence to occur. If you stay too present, you interrupt it. You answer the questions before they fully form. You soothe discomfort before it can turn into awareness. By stepping back calmly, you allow the emotional system to do its work. Another important aspect of emotional processing is autonomy. When someone feels chased or pressured, their mind focuses on escape, not connection. But when space is given, the mind regains control. Choice becomes possible, and choice strengthens attachment because it feels self-directed, not forced. When a man chooses to think about you, to miss you, to reach out, those feelings feel authentic to him. They weren't demanded, they emerge. Pulling back also shifts the emotional labor. Instead of you carrying the emotional weight of the connection, the other person begins to engage mentally. He starts wondering where he stands. He evaluates his actions. He reflects on his effort. That internal dialogue is crucial. Emotional investment grows when someone has to think, not when everything is provided for them. There's also a neurological reason this works. The brain is wired to notice change more than consistency. Change signals importance. When your energy, availability, or responsiveness shifts in a calm, respectful way, it registers as a meaningful change. The mind then searches for an explanation, and in that search, emotional attachment forms. Not because of fear or loss, but because awareness has been activated. It's important to understand that this kind of absence is not about disappearing. Disappearing creates insecurity and confusion. Calm distance creates curiosity and reflection. You are still emotionally safe. You are still respectful. You are simply no longer feeling every silence. And silence, when it's peaceful, invites depth. As emotional processing deepens, feelings become harder to ignore. What was once background noise becomes emotional presence. Thoughts surface at unexpected times, during quiet moments, late at night, in between tasks. That's how you know emotional awareness has been activated. Not because of dramatic gestures, but because of consistent mental engagement. And while all of this is happening, something equally important is occurring within you. You are no longer over-focused on how he feels. You are grounded in your own life. This emotional independence further enhances attraction because it removes pressure. Emotional pressure repels. Emotional steadiness draws in. Ultimately, absence doesn't create feelings that weren't already possible. It reveals them. It brings subconscious emotions to the surface, and it does so without forced conflict or manipulation. When you understand that emotional processing requires space, pulling away becomes an act of wisdom, not fear. So when you step back and allow silence to exist, you're not losing connection. You're giving it room to deepen. You're allowing the mind to do what it does best when it's not distracted. Reflect, realize, and attach. When you pull back your energy, something very revealing happens. The noise disappears, the pressure lifts, and what remains is truth. Pulling away doesn't force someone to change. It removes the distractions that were covering their true level of interest. When you stop initiating everything, stop overextending emotionally, and stop filling every gap, you create a mirror. And in that mirror, intentions become visible. Many relationships survive on momentum rather than intention. Messages continue because they always have. Time is spent together because it's familiar. Emotional connection feels present because one person is consistently fueling it. But momentum is not commitment. Comfort is not investment. When you pull away, you slow the pace enough for intention to surface. The question becomes clear. Does he move towards you when the effort is no longer carried by you? Energy withdrawal shifts responsibility. Instead of you maintaining closeness, the responsibility to reach out, to check in, to engage emotionally shifts to him. This is not a test, it is a return to balance. A healthy connection requires mutual effort. When one person steps back and the other steps forward, interest is confirmed. When one person steps back and nothing happens, clarity is gained. Both outcomes are valuable. What makes this process so powerful is that it removes emotional pressure. Pressure clouds judgment. When someone feels pushed to perform, their reactions are defensive rather than honest. But when space is given, actions are voluntary. Voluntary effort reveals genuine desire. If he initiates conversation, seeks connection, or adjusts his behavior without being asked, it shows that his interest is internally motivated. That's the kind of intention that sustains relationships. Pulling away also exposes whether someone is attached to you or simply attached to the benefits you provide. Emotional support, attention, validation, consistency, these are powerful comforts. When they are freely and constantly available, they can be mistaken for connection. When they are reduced, the difference becomes clear. Someone who values you will feel the absence of you. Someone who values convenience will only miss the benefits. This clarity is essential because it prevents self-deception. Without pulling away, it's easy to interpret mixed signals optimistically. A late reply becomes a busy day. Inconsistency becomes misunderstanding. Minimal effort becomes potential. When we step back, patterns speak louder than hope. Behavior becomes data, and data doesn't lie. Another important shift happens internally. When you stop over-functioning emotionally, you regain objectivity. You're no longer trying to secure the connection, you're observing it. That emotional distance allows you to see the relationship for what it actually is, not what you wish it could be. And that awareness strengthens your boundaries. Pulling away also tests emotional maturity. Someone who is emotionally available will recognize the change and respond with curiosity, care, or communication. Someone who is emotionally avoidant may withdraw further or react defensively. Neither response is something you cause. They reveal emotional capacity, and understanding emotional capacity is crucial before deepening any connection. There is a common fear that pulling away will push the right person away, but the truth is the right person doesn't disappear when balance is restored. They step forward, they notice, they adjust. They don't require you to chase them to stay connected. If someone needs you to constantly prove your value through effort, that's not chemistry, that's imbalance. This process also removes fantasy. Fantasy thrives in uncertainty. Pulling away replaces fantasy with reality. Reality might confirm your hopes or it might challenge them. But either way, reality gives you power. You stop guessing. You stop analyzing every word. You stop trying to decode behavior. You see it clearly. And clarity is attractive. When you're no longer emotionally entangled in outcome, your energy changes. You become calmer, more grounded, more self-assured. That energy invites respect. People respond differently when they sense that you are not afraid of the truth. Ultimately, pulling away is not about getting someone to prove themselves. It's about allowing space for truth to emerge. Someone meets that space with effort, presence, and intention. You've discovered alignment. If they meet it with indifference or distance, you've avoided emotional investment in someone who was never fully available. Either outcome protects your time, your heart, and your self-worth. And that's why energy withdrawal is not loss. It is discernment. When distance is created without drama, something subtle but profound happens in the emotional dynamic. Power shifts not through confrontation or control, but through calm self-possession. Peaceful detachment is not emotional coldness, it is emotional maturity. It is the ability to remain grounded in yourself while allowing someone else the freedom to choose how they show up. And that freedom is what reveals both character and commitment. Most emotional conflicts arise from fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood. When fear drives behavior, people cling, over-explain, argue, or demand reassurance. These reactions, while human, often weaken emotional positioning because they communicate dependence. Peaceful detachment removes fear from the equation. You are no longer trying to secure the relationship through force. You are allowing it to unfold naturally. This kind of detachment changes the emotional tone instantly. Instead of tension, there is calm. Instead of urgency, there is steadiness. Instead of emotional chasing, there is quiet confidence. And confidence is felt even when nothing is said. When you stop trying to manage someone's feelings or reactions, you reclaim your emotional authority. One of the most powerful aspects of peaceful detachment is that it eliminates emotional bargaining. You stop trading your peace for attention. You stop tolerating inconsistency just to maintain connection. You stop hoping that more patience or understanding will change someone's behavior. Instead, you observe. And observation brings clarity without conflict. Without arguments or ultimatums, the other person is left alone with their thoughts. There is no defensive posture to hide behind, no accusation to react against, just space. And in that space, reflection happens. When someone realizes that your emotional availability is no longer automatic, they begin to evaluate their own effort, not because they were told to, but because the dynamic changed. This shift often triggers pursuit, not out of panic, but out of awareness. When emotional pressure disappears, desire has room to surface. The connection no longer feels like an obligation, it feels like a choice. And choice strengthens emotional investment because it is internally motivated. Peaceful detachment also protects you from emotional burnout. Constant emotional engagement, especially when it's one-sided, drains your energy and clouds your judgment. Detachment restores balance. You are still open, still kind, still receptive, but no longer overextended. Your emotional cup is no longer empty, and that fullness is attractive. Another critical element of this approach is that it sets a standard without stating it. You are not telling someone how to treat you, you are demonstrating what access to you requires. When someone senses that your peace is not easily disrupted, they naturally adjust their behavior, or they reveal that they are unwilling to. Either way, the standard becomes clear. Peaceful detachment also strengthens emotional resilience. You stop attaching your sense of worth to someone else's actions. Their consistency no longer determines your mood. Their absence no longer destabilizes you. That inner stability creates emotional safety